Welcome to the Create What You Speak podcast. Join me as we have a real-life discussion on how to change your life by changing your thoughts. Remember, question everything, trust yourself, and find your truth. Welcome to the Create What You Speak podcast. My name is Sloan Fremont, and I'm your host. Today, my guest is Anne Jirsch, author of the book, Future Vision Your Working Life, 10 Strategies to Get Ahead. As we all know, change is going to come in our careers no matter what. And if we don't anticipate the change, chances are we'll slip backwards. Anne has developed a unique tool called future visioning to help us anticipate the way forward in our journey. And she's going to tell us about that today. Anne, welcome to the show.
Thank you. I'm really, really happy to be here.
I'm glad you are here because I've been excited to talk to you. So why don't we start out by telling the audience a little bit about yourself and what led you to write your book, Future Vision Your Working Life?
Well, I've worked as an intuitive for a great many years, many decades. And it was just over 20 years ago, I developed the future vision in zooming off into the future. We found the accuracy was phenomenal. And it was about just over 6 years ago, I started to really see that we're going to get sideswiped time and time again. The world's going to keep changing. Mm-hmm. And the thing is, we have a load of change and then we think it'll all settle down. I don't think that's going to happen. I think we've got continual change, which is scary. But when people are smart, they can actually thrive in these times because most people won't be smart. Most people are freeze, be frightened of change. We want change, but we're scared of it. So I kept seeing all this change and I thought I need to come up with some strategies because I could see people not coping. They weren't coping with the overwhelm of all we have to do, we have to deal with these days. I could see so much change. It was just, pick any industry. And there's change after change after change, as well as world changes. So I just thought I need to put some strategies together. And I started to watch the people that seem to handle these times. They just take it in their stride. Mm-hmm. And I tapped into what we need to, intuitively tapped in. And I come up with 10 strategies that I really felt we need in order to thrive in the future.
Yes. And I absolutely loved your book. Like I said, I found when I first saw the title, I was like, now this is interesting. What is this? How will this work? And in the first chapter, when you talk about being guided by your intuition, I mean, intuition is something we talk a lot about on the show. It's something I'm very interested in. I'm always working with myself intuitively and see how I can continue to grow that. But what I found about your book is the exercises you give. I love that you give exercises. You give real world examples and you give exercises, but they were so doable because sometimes I think what you talked about with people when we think about change or fear and things like that, we're not taught to trust our intuition. Most of us don't know how to do that. We are afraid of it. We think we're doing it wrong. And what I really loved about your book was that you made it accessible to people. It is very simple if people are willing to do it.
I think many things today are overcomplicated and often we overcomplicate it for the wrong reasons. It makes people feel clever if it's complicated or we use really long words. I like things that I found the best people I've met in the world in this field, in the spiritual self-help field, people I've gone and trained with, their work's simple. That they keep it straightforward, bullet points. They tell you what they need to know and how to do it. It's easy to waffle on and waste a lot of time. It's too tiring these days. What we need now is succinct knowledge of how. It's interesting what you say about the intuition because what actually happened was I wasn't born intuitive. My grandmother was a fortune teller, so I knew it worked. I used to watch her, nosy, looking around the door. So I went out to study how intuition works. So I've actually studied how intuition works. Then once you know how it works, you can teach it to other people. Now, if you do something naturally, you usually don't know how to tell other people because you do it naturally. Right. Because I had to go and learn to be intuitive. That's how I could come up with strategies.
Yes. So let's start there because I wanted to focus for our conversation today on 3 of the 10 strategies in your book. And these were my favorite ones that I really felt like would be great conversation. So The three that I loved were strategy 1, being guided by your intuition, strategy 2, understanding how you process your intuition, which I think is very important, and strategy 8, which was stretch time, which I loved that one too, because doesn't everybody want more time? So let's start with strategy 1 and talking about being guided by your intuition. And maybe you could talk a little bit about how you said you studied intuition, since you felt that was something you needed to hone in on a little bit more. So maybe if you could touch in on that too, for people who are wanting to tune in more to their intuition, but maybe aren't sure how to go about it.
Yeah, well, when I was a kid, as I said, I used to watch my grandmother, and I used to try and have a premonition. As a kid, I'd sit there at the end of the bed and go, right, I'm going to know something. And I never, even by guesswork, I never got it right. You think I'd have the odd guess? Nothing at all. But in my teens, I went out to India, because that was kind of, back then, that was where you went to learn mystical things. We didn't have spiritual bookshops. Our local bookshop never have had esoteric material. We didn't have the internet. We didn't have all the things we got today. So I set off for India as a teenager. I went to ashrams and I tried all these different things. Then it's the maddest thing. I couldn't, I'm terrible. I'm trying to do meditation. I'm a fidget. I'm hyperactive. I like being hyperactive. So I'm rubbish at meditation and focusing, and it didn't work for me. And then I met a beggar, and he taught me.
A beggar?
A beggar. It was the oddest thing. I was in Calcutta, and it was weird, because people say, well, you don't want to go to Calcutta. They never ever said why. They just thought, I think it was a long way away from everything else I was traveling around. And I went there, and this guy just seemed smiling. There was something about him. And I think we don't always realise I was noticing his energy. Of course, we didn't realise it. I was only young then. And I'd stop and talk to him, and he started to just explain things about intuition. He'd explain about energy. He'd explain time. And I just used to sit with him. I'd take him food or something. I'd sit on his mat and talk to him. It was, And when I came back, I changed. By the time I was away a year, when I came back, there was something different about me. And my best friend bought me a pack of tarot cards. I tried to read them before, and I couldn't make head or tail of it. What does it mean? This one next to that one, and that one there. Couldn't make head or tail of it. I picked them up and I could read them. It was almost as if something clicked in. I just knew what they meant. And that was me. I'm still reading cards. Did a reading an hour ago. I still read cards. But with the actual breaking down, I think what we don't realise is it's usually subtle. Intuition is subtle. So we expect it to be, oh my God, I've just had a feeling not to drive that. And it's not. We just start hesitating. My biggest intuition for my own life is when I'm hesitating. Think, why am I hesitating? That is always a big message. So we all do it. We say, we've got this lovely restaurant up the road. We love it. And one day we go, don't fancy that today. Why don't you fancy? What is different today? And you ignore that. You go, and it's crazy busy. The best chef's not there, and and you go, I knew I shouldn't have gone there. How did you know? And we don't listen to that, because it is just something undefinable. But it is that. I've got to tell you, there's this amazing study, and it's quite an old study. They found when there's been a train crash, up to usually around 25% less people who usually catch that train show up. 25%, that's a huge figure. There's no real reason. They didn't wake up that day and go, oh no, there's going to be a train crash. Something stopped them. And I actually had this with a family member. They're like clockwork. We're not morning people. So he got up this morning, and he always gets up, tea, shower, at the door, we're quite like that morning, we've got a pattern. Got up one day, and he just sort of looked puzzled and went, I think I'm going later. And I said, why? He said, I don't know. And he looked confused by it. He went, no, I'm going to go in a bit later. Never goes in later, on time. That was the day the tube was bombed in London.
Oh my gosh. I mean, it's just crazy how that intuition, especially on that, because him feeling confused by that, right? There's something there that, and especially in that case, feeling there's something in that, enough churning in the body that the body for him maybe couldn't make sense of it, but the confusion was enough to keep him stationary and to go in later. And what your point about it being intuition being subtle, I've realized that in my own life as I've just tried things, tested things, learned things, I think sometimes we want it to be this big crashing thing or this like big slap in the face kind of thing, right? But it's not, and it never will be. That's not its role, right? Its role is to be this subtle thread, feeling, whatever you want to call it, that keeps pulling you in the direction that you're meant to go. That's for your highest good. One thing I loved, you had a quote at the beginning of your book about, I think it was something about people saying they feel like they're doing it wrong or they're worried about making up what they're experiencing, when we tap into our intuition. You want to tell the listeners what your comment is to that?
Well, I take people into the future, and it's the same as if I took somebody to a past life or a future lifetime or head in their current lifetime. Your brain will try and make sense of it, because your brain will be saying, you can't see the future. Don't be silly. How can you see the future? So your brain will try it and find a logical reason why. And it will say, it's because you saw that movie, you read that in the book, it's because you want that to happen. Or it's kind of, the brain will argue with you. And I think that held me back a little bit with the future visioning work, because I think for a few years, even though I was working with the military guys, even though we were consistently accurate, there was still part of us thinking, but am
I making this up? Am I just making this up? And then it's,
is it luck? Is it luck? Even though one of our first experiences was a dramatic world event that we could never have guessed, never attack on the Twin Towers, nothing like that had ever happened before. It was the first thing we envisioned. And we wasn't trying to look into the future, we were trying to look at the past. And of course, when it happened, it blew us away. So I think one of them things I say to my clients, if that's for overthinkers, and a lot of us live in our head these days. Overthinkers, they will overthink it. And I always say to them, I tell you what, make it up. Go on, just make it up. And that gets the flow going. And I go, then come back to me in 6 months and tell me how it's all happened. And then they do. When we free ourselves to do that, it's we relax into it, and it doesn't feel like we're faking it. And you even say in your book, like, you ask the question, okay, so have you ever felt like that you're making it up about anything else, right? So why do you feel like you're making it up about this, right? Why can't we just lean in and trust it? So do you want to tell us a little bit about your future visioning and what that means or what that entails? And then I have a story to share with you on the exercise from your book when I did this. So I want to tell you about that afterwards. Oh, goody. I love that. It started out, as I said, I was working with some military guys, and they wanted to see something from the past. We all jumped forward and we saw the attack on the Twin Towers. This was 3 weeks before it happened. We couldn't make sense of it because nothing like that had happened before. I was used to looking into the future with cards, but this was a different ball game. Right. And of course, when it happened 3 weeks later, we were shell-shocked, and we were upset because we didn't know enough to stop it. Mark Twain said, what's the point of seeing every little bird that falls? What's the point of seeing it fall? And I'm a big fan of Mark Twain, and I thought that was such a good quote. What's the point of seeing it if you can't change a tragedy? But after a little while, we started to experiment. We started to predict lots of world events. One of the things, I worked particularly with one soldier, Dave, and he said, America and England are going to invade Iraq. And we actually laughed. It sounded so ludicrous at the time. It sounded really ridiculous. So we consistently did that for several years. And then I started to experiment with clients, and I'd take them maybe into a future lifetime or ahead 5 years. The thing that really got me was they were coming back and going, that house I saw myself living in, I'm living in it. That person I saw myself marrying, I've met them. But the bit that really got me was it's happening much sooner. I love that. I'm not very patient. So it's just like, patience is so overrated, isn't it? I want it now. Let's get life moving. So I like that, as if we're bringing the best of the future into our current consciousness. And I love that because we bypassed that. I dated 3 bad people before I met the right one. We bypassed, I went to that other job that was a disaster before I went to the right company. We kind of honed in and went to what we needed. And we brought the energy of it back. Yes. Now, because you've got to be able to make something happen. We try and manifest and make things happen with where we are now, with how we feel now.
Right.
with our current limitations. And that's why manifesting is harder than we realize. We go beyond that. We go and get that energy. So once you can feel it and see it and taste it and smell it, you make it happen. So yeah, I work with clients, I work with companies, we look at world events. It's just magical. We've got a whole. So what happened was, I saw myself, my life started to fast track massively. I ended up with a big book deal. The book went out worldwide, sold massively. So I started to think, oh, crikey, I can't do this all myself. I love jumping on planes, maybe able to train a few other people. And that was it. The training company just went ballistic, people, because not everybody's going to get it, but the ones that do really get it, they get, okay, I want to tap into that. I like that. I want to be able to tap into the future and find the best way forward. And it benefits everybody. So say for you tapping in and finding an amazing future, it can only benefit the people around you. When we're struggling, we're not helping anyone. Anyway, you've got a story for us.
I do have a story. And what I love about that, about jumping into the future and bringing that energy back, because you're exactly right. And I've talked about that a lot on the show here about, I always refer to it as our come from energy, right? Where we're at in our current state, and it's the energy we're bringing out into the world. But like you said, if we're we don't like whatever our situation is, we're going to continue. We can try to muscle and try to think happy thoughts and try to, do things like that. But what I love about your approach is we're going to the future. We're bringing that, getting that energy and what that feels like, and we're bringing it back to the present moment. And I think that is what a lot of different techniques miss, is that they're trying to use the same energy in the current moment. And what I love about yours is we're going to get it. So
thank you.
In the book, Anne has, in the first chapter, every chapter has exercises, but the first one I did was the one that's called Step Up to the Future. And I'm not going to go into all the details, so that if you're interested, I would highly recommend Anne's book. I mean, this book is amazing. But there's a technique she talks you through to take you into the future and talk to your future self 1,000 years ahead. So I did this exercise, and this is something I'm somewhat familiar with doing, not in the way that you presented it, but I have done this in other ways before. So what I went to my future self, I was talking, I was feeling different things, having these conversations. And I asked my future self about a current situation, is this going to work out? Or it was something, should I do this or should I do that kind of question? And I even wrote this in your book so I could remind myself of this. My future self said to me, if you want something, why would you give up on it? And what it was saying was, like, the question, the energy I was bringing in the current state right now it was really energy of, I want this thing, but I don't think I can have it. And when I went to my future self, I could see myself having it. And so my future self asked me, if you want it, why would you give up on it? And it was such an easy, way to look at it, and so profound and so simple. Yet in my current energy, I could not see that. I could only see I want it, but. And so I really, that exercise was so powerful. And I wanted to share that with you and with the audience to really encourage people to tap into this, because there was so much value here.
I love that. That's really good. It took me a long time to be able to connect with 1,000 years. I was going next lifetime, maybe 100 years or 50 years, or for the world, or 5 or 10 years for our current life. It's a long time before I could get to 1,000 years. Once I did, I found it clicked in, and I find I can take other people there very easily. Yeah. And it's profound. I mean, I think a lot of the time people talk about seeing angels. I think it is their far distant future self from a long way in the future. It's just, I did a test group when I first started going that far. I've got a few of my practitioners in, and I just got them to write down. I took them 1,000 years and got them to describe their future self. And every single one of them tall, kind of translucent. It was very angelic. And what better guide could you have than yourself?
Right. And I know. I love that. And that to me was, and I think also doing this exercise, it puts the resonance of that feeling within you. And so that resonance, once it's there, you can recognize it and you know what that is. So it doesn't feel like such a foreign thing to think about the future. Like if I'm thinking about it with my mind just in every day, right, it feels so far off. It feels unobtainable, or it feels like I felt in my situation. I want it, but I can't have it. But when you go there in that mental state where you've relaxed yourself enough, you're in there and you allow yourself to go there, you allow yourself to be creative with it and just let it unfold without trying to control it, or, thinking that it's not real or whatever. The resonance, like we're saying, the energy comes into you today in your current state, which then to me, what it felt like, it like loosened me up. It softened me up. I wasn't as rigid anymore. Right. And I think that knowing what that feels like now is because that's part of the whole, we talk about the law of attraction, right? That's the whole premise of that. Get the feeling of what you want now so you can have it later. Well, again, we're trying to do that with current state energy that isn't allowing us, because if we were doing it now, we would have the thing that we want, right? So it was like, to me, it always felt like a catch-22, like I was going in circles.
Absolutely. Yeah. It is that difference. I think also we've got so many options these days. It really is. Well, I should do that. Maybe I should do that. We've all got, at any one point, I'm thinking, should I be making more webinars? Should I write another book? Should I be making more of this? Should I put on a different training? Should I be sorting out the websites? We've all probably got 10 different, so it all gets a bit jumbled up. Then we go and learn something new, and I better take that course and read that book.
Right.
Once I started going into the future, when that's what I do. When I wrote that book, I ignored everything. I actually was collecting information for 5 years. I usually write a book in 6 months. I was collecting ideas for 5 years, just to collect, and then I spent a year writing it, and I just went to ground. I just literally worked on it because I knew I had to. And that's the lovely bit about going into the future. All the other things, people go, why don't you do this? Why don't you do that? Blah, blah, blah. I went, no, I know what I need to do. And it is that 110% focus. You've noticed people like Steve Jobs, they have that obsessive, or Elon Musk, they have that obsessive focus on something. Once you know, and you're not jumping around 10 different things, you can really focus, and it's energy, it's mindset, it's everything starts to lead you towards it. But you need to know what it is, and I'm glad you found yours.
Yes, me too. Thank you. But and also when we know what we're doing, when we know what we're going after, it stops the questioning of, how we do the internal questioning of it. Am I doing the right thing? Should I be doing this? Right. This solves that, because there's no question. And there was another exercise in the book I did, and it was, I can't remember which one it was, but there was another where I think I only went like 6 months in the future. And it was also this, I actually got to the point with it where all I had to do was think of myself 6 months in the future, connect with myself 6 months in the future, think about one thing, think about the other, and I could energetically feel the answer. That's how what turned out for me. I know it's different for different people depending on where they are and if they're willing to let themselves go there. But that is one thing. And that was fast. That was within 5 minutes I could do that. So it really is an amazing process. Like what you hear so far? Take what you've learned and invest in yourself with the Create What You Speak Academy. Visit createwhatyouspeak.com to learn more. Now back to the show.
Once you've done it a couple of times, you do get so you can just snap into the future. And I love that when you go and look at the options, that can be really interesting. You often find the wrong app. You can watch people when I'm taking people for a session, they'll go, I've got to stay in this job, almost like, and then it'll be ding, the other option, something that they might not even physically move. It's almost if you sense their energy lifting up, but you can see that shift into, that's what I want. That's the future I'm going for.
Yes.
And everything aligns for that. Yeah.
And so let's move into strategy 2, and we touched on this a little bit about understanding how you process intuition. And we had mentioned how it's not always as lightning bolt strike as maybe we might think. It's more of those subtler type feelings. Can you talk a little bit about that and what you've learned over your time studying it?
Yeah, well, there's two things really I want to mention. One is we don't think of it as a physical thing. but it is a physical thing. I was studied by a guy really a long time ago, and he said, when you're doing a reading and you really know something, you make a fist, and as you're talking to the person, then you touch your stomach, which is almost like saying gut feeling.
Right.
I just said to him, I don't do that. I had no idea that I did that. After I started to notice, but sometimes it is a physical thing, for me, it's like a stop. I just stop what I'm doing, stop. For some people, it could be squidgy feeling in their stomach. Sometimes it is.
Yeah. It's either the stomach. Your
stomach. Well, you're gut-based. I like gut-based people because they take action. They tend to move.
Yeah.
I interviewed a guy, Carl Smith, who's a leading hypnotherapy trainer in the UK. He's ex-soldier, ex-army. And he said, when something's not right, it feels like a actual physically, like a tight band around his head.
Uh-huh.
And there was one time he was in a minefield. They're driving across field after field after field. I forget where it was now, somewhere in Eastern Europe. And all of a sudden they got to one field and he just went, whoa, I've got a feeling around my head. And another guy in the vehicle felt the same. The driver thought they were potty, but they stopped and they spent 48 hours there while people cleared the minefield. Oh. They'd actually driven into a minefield.
Yeah.
But he actually went and got tested for blood pressure because it was such a physical feeling.
Pressure. Yeah.
Yeah. He could actually feel this tight band. And ages later, he had a packed up, he was packing up, he was at the army, a policeman, packing up his equipment and thinking, well, I better leave my locker tidy. I'm not going to be back here. And part of him thought, why would I think that? You know, you just have this random thought and think, why did I think that? That he was home 2 or 3 minutes and a car flew through the wall.
That's crazy. I read that in your book. Yes, that's crazy. That's crazy.
After that, and he really went through a lot, you know, sort of 9 months of physical, you know, rehab, apart from the mental post-traumatic stress. But he said after that, he would always know if there was somebody who was a drunk driver. It'd be in a patrol car and he'd go, they'd be driving quite normally. He would know. It's that instinct. It kind of starts to come up, doesn't it? Now, how we break that down. If any of you have studied NLP, look at the submodalities. We learn submodalities in NLP.
What is NLP for those maybe who don't know?
Right, neuro-linguistic programming. It was devised by Dr. Richard Bandler and Dr. Grinder, and I think it life-changing stuff, NLP. It teaches you how you process. You know, it's like we kind of keep repeating patterns, and we do it unconsciously. So how are we going to change it? They can actually tell what your pattern is and how to change it. So part of NLP is to look at the submodalities. So say, if I was to get you to think of a really bad experience, I'd say, what is the image in your head? And you might say it's dark, it's cloudy, it's a small crushed image. I might feel my shoulders tensing up. Right. And you go through all the processes. What did it sound like? Then if I say to you the best day of your life, you would describe it differently. You say, well, the picture, we don't actually ever stop and think, oh, the picture when I have a good experience is bright and sunny. Right. It's a big image. My shoulders go back. So I found that you have the submodalities of intuition. That day you thought, I don't like it here. There's something bad in this place, or that person, I've got a really bad vibe. I get them to break down the submodalities. What's the picture in your head? Is it moving? Is it still? Is it what can you hear? What's happening in your body? What do you feel?
Yeah. And
I get them to break down the processes. And in the future, anytime, excuse me, they get a weird feeling like that. And you might only get a slither, but once you know that's how you code negative intuition, you only need a slither to go, hang on a minute, let me check this out. And then you go to one where I just knew that was the right way to go. I knew that was the thing to do. I knew it was that was going to be brilliant. I couldn't wait to get there and do that. And you find the code for that. Whenever you get that, it might be a warm tingle in your stomach. It can be all different things. You'll have a code for that. As soon as you get that warm feeling, you go, right, we go ahead. And business people do this. Business people use their intuition more, and they talk about.
Yeah, and everybody has access to that kind of, you know, and it's the three cues that, like you said, it's what you hear, what you see, and what you feel at the time. And the other really interesting part about this to me is that everybody's cues are going to be different. Like I'm going to feel something different than you. You're going to hear something. One of the more interesting times for me when I was first learning about this and starting out, when I was tapping into my intuition and understanding what my, what was triggered, what I could recognize was, I met somebody once, and this person was running like a spiritual group, in charge of a very big group. And I met this person, and as soon as I shook this person's hand and I looked at her in the eyes, in my mind, the phrase, "Don't trust the eyes." Okay, like that's what I heard in my mind. Immediately, wow. I actually pulled back because I was caught so off guard. Yeah. But that person, I did not trust that person after that. I didn't go back to any of that person's events, but it was so clear in my mind hearing it. And all it took was that touch of the hand and that slight, it was like a zing through my body of like, this is not a person you want to be around. And I think everybody's probably had similar situations like that. And we just, we've been taught to ignore them or not think of them as any big deal. But these small, like you were saying, these small slivers, these small, that thing that makes you like do a double take, or like you said, you stop. Like for me, I always feel it in my stomach. It feels like a sword going back and forth in my, that's just my cue. So, pay attention, right? These things are worth paying attention to, because this is your personal guide, your personal compass. And, paying attention to these, honing in, like you talk about in your book. And I know your book focuses a lot on work and career, but this applies for anything, right? It can be anything in anyone's life that they're wanting to change or improve. We have this guidance system, and now hopefully after what we've experienced over the past couple of years, and people have become more aware of this, more awakened to this type of the importance of this. Hopefully people will start to develop this, and then think of the world if we all started acting according to our own intuition. We'd all be doing everyone would be more in alignment, doing more things that were right for them, which in turn, that resonates out into the world.
I'd say that a lot. One thing I love is when you sort of say about focusing and listening to that, like you recalled from that woman. Most people, especially spiritual people, go, "Oh God, she's probably very nice. What's wrong with me? What am I thinking?" We're not trusting it. But I think you're absolutely right when you said about what we resonate out into the world. I come across so many spiritual people, and they posting negative stuff, angry stuff all day long on Facebook and Instagram. And I just say, if we create our own reality, what we're creating, if every day we're ranting and hating and, oh, look at the rich, they're just getting richer. And you just go, look, just help other people, help yourself. Look, just send out some good vibes of encouragement. People are so divided these days, and they're rowing all day long. And that's what they're putting out in the world. They're putting out in the world division, anger. Just get your bit right.
Right. And even if you think about, writing negative comments or posting negative things, you can feel that internally when you're writing those things. You can feel the negativity. You can feel in your mind. Your mind is most likely saying, you probably shouldn't write that. Don't post that. Don't go there. Walk away. Right. But how many people listen? Right. Most of them don't. So it's those cues are there if you're willing to listen.
Yeah. And I think collectively we could be creating an amazing future. I think we can glimpse. One of the exercises I've got on my website that I really is a favorite of mine is look at the world. It's a free one. Anyone can download it. Look at the world in 50 years. Just get an idea. How is it? The environment, finances, people of the world. Have a look, make a note. Now go to our best possible future for the world in 50 years. The best part, and how do we make that happen, and what is your personal part to play? And I love that, because it's in our hands. We can do anything. It's in our hands, rather than going, it's going to be terrible. Right. Well, it's up to us, isn't it? It's up to us and our children. And
and having that role I'm going to call it a role, because when you tap in like that, you look in the future, you think about how you want it to be, and then you think of your role in it, because often it feels too big. I can't do anything about it. Forget, it's not worth it. Right. But if you think about that and you think about your role, then that also is another direction, if you're tuned in, for you to follow, because then you understand your next steps, because you understand why you're doing it. You're not, it doesn't feel so overwhelming at that point. It feels doable, and it's in your span of control. That's one of the big things that I think we get worked up over, is we try to fix these things that are out of our span of control. But we have a span of control, and we can do something about it. And that to me is where the magic is. If you're looking for purpose or trying to understand what your next steps are, it's within your span of control. That's where to look.
Yeah, absolutely. And once you find your part to play, if you go and have a little glimpse at the future and find your part to play, you become aligned to the world and your path and your purpose, and your life will be a whole lot better, and you will attract better people. I just find you start attracting, once you walk the right path for you, once you know your mission, which I love helping people find their mission. Once you know your mission, the right people start showing up. How are they going to find you if you're on the wrong path, or you're over here, or you're over there?
Or you don't even know what it is, right? When you don't even know, you know?
Yeah.
So let's talk about the strategy 8, which is stretching time. This one to me was so interesting. It's, and I know we don't have to go into every detail of it, because, it's all in your book, but the concept of stretching time, and, you talk about in there about how we all feel frazzled. We all feel like there's not enough time, and you really do have an amazing way to help us reframe that in your book.
Yeah, time fascinates me. I mean, we waste huge amounts of it and say we don't have time. We are overwhelmed these days. I find we are overwhelmed because we're trying to do everything, be everything, learn everything, talk to everyone. We are really, really coming into a time of overwhelm. I think part of that is because our brain filters haven't caught up. I mean, look at how much more you're dealing with now than 20 years ago. So our brain filters isn't filtering out as much as it should be. A brain filtering out stacks of stuff the whole time, but it hasn't changed enough. One of the things I like playing with time, and I put in the book how I had one morning, and we've all got this, we'll all have this, where you got that day where you go, I don't know I'm going to do all this. I do not know I'm going to fit this. People I had to phone super urgently. I needed to drop somebody off at the hospital. There were roadworks. Thank you. You wake up and there's roadworks, which means you can't, takes forever. I left early. I had a full day of clients, and the traffic just stopped. And I thought, I'm going to get there after my client. I don't know how I'm going to do this day. I've got to make that. I've got to get hold of the estate agent. Otherwise, you'd probably say real estate. Otherwise, I'm going to lose that house that I've been fighting for it and everything. It was just like,
one of those days. Yeah.
Yeah. And so I sat there and I just kind of asked about time, and I was actually stuck in traffic. It's like you can go into that state, but you're still aware of the traffic, and if it moves and you're kind of in that sort of double state. And I had this image of, I haven't got a bit of stringy, but it's almost like a bit of string or licorice or something. And I was shown time sort of doing this, bending back on it. It's like, oh, that's how you can see from there to there, twisting and stretching. And once I saw the stretching thing, I thought, wow, that's interesting. So I thought about my day as I'm stuck in traffic. My first client was due within a short space of time. And I imagine, how does time look? Now, we code time in our brains. If you ask people, where's last Christmas, they'll probably point behind them.
Right.
If you go, 3 months' time, they'll point in front. How is it all staggered out? So I imagined my day, and 10 a.m. was about there, 12 was there, 2 was there. And I imagined stretching it out. So 10 a.m. was further out. And the whole thing was further out. And it was weird because all of a sudden the traffic moved and I got to the office early. It's almost like it wasn't possible. And I managed to drop the person off at the hospital. It flowed with my clients. I made the phone calls really quick as soon as I got in, got hold of it. It's almost as if things slotted into place better. So it stretched out the time. It was really, really odd. And I found it really cool that we can play with
when
time.
I was reading it, yes, because it's like when we pick it, like if you picture everyone's been there stuck in traffic. If you picture yourself sitting there in traffic, it's almost like it feels like the thing you need to get to is like right at the hood of your car, maybe, right? It's right there. Like I have to get right there, but it's going to take me forever to get there. But with that exercise of stretching it out and feeling like you've had more time, it doesn't feel so acute as if we need it right this second. And it's amazing to me that we can, these things that feel static or feel stuck, like there's no bendability to it. This example is the perfect example of how we can, as you say, stretch time, right? It is possible. It may not feel like it, but if you tune in, if you're doing this kind of work already, I think these things will start to me, it feels like they start to come naturally. That's how it's felt for me. They don't feel impossible. Like if you're just verbalizing with maybe someone who is not, maybe a friend who is like skeptical of this or something. But if you start doing this, once you start seeing it, then you get almost like the evidence that, oh wait, that is possible. And then it's easy to move into some of the other strategies.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I read quotes from some of the greatest quantum physicists, and they all said, I have no idea how time works. We know it's not in a straight line. We know it's not 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, but we don't know how it works. In fact, I found some of the quotes quite funny. One guy said, I wish I'd never had anything to do with it. I wish I'd never started looking into it. The quotes were quite amusing. Yeah, they were. And they said, if you think you know how it works, you haven't understood it.
Yeah.
I just love the quote. I love the quotes. I've got them written down somewhere. They really are magical. Because we don't know. I mean, time actually moves at different speeds in different places. If you were at the top of a very, very, very tall tower and I'm down there, time, which way round is it? I think it goes slower when you're on the ground than it does up there. You can actually measure that with a very finely tuned clock.
Interesting.
It'd be a fraction of a fraction of a fraction of a second, but there is a difference. Somebody in a spacecraft has their time, they age less than we do on Earth. It's hard. I don't think our brains have the capacity to really understand time.
Yeah.
I don't think our brains can. But I think we're coming up to a point where we are starting to understand. And one of the reasons I feel that, I think, I could be wrong, but I think a lot of films and TV shows are divinely inspired. I feel when the time's right, it's almost if we're receiving, I think it's from our future selves. 20 years ago, you were pushed to find shows about floating around in timelines. There weren't that many. Now every other film's got that concept, change the past, zoom off into the future. And I think it's because we're ready to start understanding that concept.
Yeah, it is fascinating. And I mean, we could do a whole show on time. I mean, it's just so fascinating, but we are coming up on our time, unfortunately. And this has been such an amazing conversation. I think I could talk to you for hours. It's just I love your energy, very upbeat. And I love, like I said, I loved your book. It was so amazing. So before we close out today, what do you want to make sure the listeners know maybe about yourself or about your book and even about future visioning? What would you offer to the listeners today?
I really had to write that book. I was kind of so compelled to write it. And there's lots more in the book about finding your tribe. People are so isolated or separated or just have too many people around, and we need to find our tribe. The book's packed with exercises, so I would love you to read. I'm not just trying to sell books. I really felt I was on a mission to write this book.
Yeah, it was
really,
very, very doable. Everything in your book I found very doable, which I loved. It was and very impactful. So yeah, sorry, go ahead.
But one thing I would say is everybody I meet, I can see there's so much more to them than they believe themselves. And that's to me is the magic, working with someone and just going, no, there's so much more to you. Girl I was working with earlier, she's great with art. And I just went, but you should be out there everywhere, not just doing it in your back bedroom and locally. Just get it out there. Go whatever I see the magic in people, and I think that's the bit. What I try to do with my work is find that bit of magic and make them so much more. Don't die with your music inside you when you're elderly. Don't look back and think, oh, I could have written that book. I could have put on that big training. I could have done that seminar. Go do it. Go. Yeah. That's what I like, finding the magic. I want people to know they're so much more than they know.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. And that's really, a lot of the basis of the show. So, Anne, thank you again for joining us. Can you let the listeners know how they can find more about you and your book?
Well, you've got my name, so make a note of the odd spelling of my name. I'm everywhere, so I'm not shy. So look me up. You can go to Anne Jirsch, hotmail.co.uk. I really like Hotmail. People say I should just use other one, but I really like Hotmail. I'm on Facebook. I pop up. So there's annejirsch.com. Drop me a message and I'll send you a free download. Send you a nice download so you can have a little look at your future. Contact me. I'd love you guys. Lovely show as well. Lovely. It's so it's comfortable, your show. It's very easy.
Good.
Yeah,
Thank you.
Very nice flow. Yeah, I love it. So thank you so much. Thank you for having me here.
Thank you too. And I'll include all the links in the show notes so the listeners can find you easily. My guest this week has been Anne Jirsch, author of the book, Future Vision, Your Working Life. And you've been listening to the Create What You Speak podcast, brought to you by webtalkradio.net. You can also hear the podcast on Spotify, iHeartRadio, Stitcher, Apple Podcasts, and your favorite podcasting platform. I'm Sloan Fremont, and I hope you'll join me next week where we continue to free our minds, expand our consciousness, and really untangle those thoughts and patterns that keep us stuck. So if you have not joined the Telegram group, remember, I do have a Telegram group called Create What You Speak. I'll put the link in the show notes, and you can visit my website, sloanfremont.com, to find out more.